Program, B.S. English. Course, 19th Century English Novel. Topic, Use of Irony in Pride and Prejudice. Prepared by Dr. Shahryar Khan. Question. Write a detailed critical note on the use of irony in Jane Austen's novel Pride and Prejudice. Introduction. The simplest definition of irony is the difference between appearance and reality. In literature, it is a mode of discourse that conveys opposite of apparent meaning. There are two major kinds of irony, verbal and situational. Verbal irony occurs when the literal meaning of the words contrasts with the intended meaning. It operates through the medium and conventions of language. Situational irony is a literary device in which the actual outcome of a situation is the opposite of what is expected or intended. Situational irony is also called dramatic irony. According to Wayne C. Booth, irony is a mode of communication that depends on a reader's ability to recognize meaning beyond the written words. M. H. Abrams thinks that the function of irony is to invite critical reflection on human behavior and social norms. Jane Austen has used irony in all these contexts in her fiction. For her, it is a strategy through which she criticizes the misconceptions and follies. Lionel Trilling comments that through her use of irony, Austen shows that no human action is ever entirely pure or entirely simple. Point 1. The very first sentence of the novel is an example of verbal irony. It is a truth universally acknowledged, that a single man in possession of a good fortune, must be in want of a wife. The sentence is referring to the men of good fortune in the Regency-era England. The society was patriarchal and men with good fortune had all the power. To say that such men were in want of a wife is ironical. The irony becomes evident when the narrative moves to the introduction of Mrs. Bennet. Mrs. Bennet is obsessed with the marriage of her 5 daughters as their estate is entailed and getting married is the only future her daughters have. Thus, in reality, it is the women without fortune who are in want of a good husband. Moreover, it is not a universal truth but something which is only true for the women of that particular time and place. The sentence sets the tone for what is to come. Point 2. Mr. Bennet is a master of verbal irony, providing an amusing commentary on the people and situations around him. When Mrs. Bennet complains that he has no compassion for her nerves, he replies, "You mistake me, my dear. I have a high respect for your nerves. They are my old friends. I have heard you mention them with consideration these last 20 years at least." It is obvious that Mr. Bennet is quite fed up with Mrs. Bennet's complaints about her nerves. When he says that her nerves are his friends, he is being ironical. Though this irony is lost on Mrs. Bennet. Later, Mr. Bennet receives a letter from Mr. Collins informing of his arrival. Mr. Bennet says, "There is something very sensible and good-humored in his reply, and I am impatient to see him." There is nothing sensible and good-humored in the personality of Mr. Collins. When we finally meet him, we come to realize the irony of this comment. Point 3. We also have examples of situational irony in the novel. One instance is the interference of Darcy to save his friend Charles Bingley from an imprudent marriage to Jane Bennet. Darcy thinks that Bennet family is vulgar and lack decorum. On this account, Charles Bingley should not get involved with Jane Bennet. Ironically, when he stays in London to oversee that Bingley may not interact with Jane, he himself comes into frequent contact with Elizabeth. His attempt to save Bingley from Bennet family results in his eventual marriage with Elizabeth Bennet. When he proposes to Elizabeth for the first time, he says that "in vain I have struggled." This sentence perfectly sums up the irony of his situation. Point 4. Elizabeth's claim to discernment is another instance of situational irony. She thinks she is a very good reader of character. She is quite confident of her assessment of both Darcy and Wickham. Her first impression is that Darcy is proud and selfish while Wickham is a man of good character. In time, we see how wrong she was about both of them. Towards the end, Darcy proves to be a man of integrity while Wickham shows his true colors when he elopes with Lydia. As the novel is narrated through the point of view of Elizabeth, the readers also commit the same error of judgment. Elizabeth admits this when she says, "How despicably have I acted," she cried, "I, who have prided myself on my discernment, I, who have valued myself on my abilities." Conclusion. To conclude, we can say that Jane Austen has used irony as a very effective weapon to criticize and ridicule the moral and social conventions of her time. Through her use of verbal and situational irony, she has exposed the individual vanities and class consciousness. Unlike Jonathan Swift, Austen is not a bitter critic of institutions. She remains within the decorum. Like most satirists who use irony as a device, Austen does not remain completely detached. She is sympathetic towards her characters. Commenting upon this characteristic of Jane Austen, Mary Poovey says, "Irony functions as a safety valve. It allows Austen to voice her dissatisfaction with the patriarchal order while appearing to remain within the bounds of proper ladylike behavior.